ever wanted to make a beautiful award-winning quilt, well then this class is for you, because we're going to make this gorgeous Texas wildflower quilt. I'm going to show you all the tips and tricks that I use when building my fusible flower quilts. And hi, I'm Melinda Bula. I'm glad that you're with us today. Here in my studio, it's a beautiful sunny day and it's time to just have fun and make a beautiful flower quilt. So this class is for you, and I'm going to show you a lot of tips and tricks. We're going to finish the quilt with thread play. I call my technique Renegade thread play. It's because we're kind of breaking all the rules, and we're using a Sulky Rayon thread to do these stitches. And I'll share a lot of secrets about how I sew through thick fusible web with a delicate rayon thread. You'll learn that today in class also. So this is going to be about 2.5 hours. It's not real long. All along the process you can stop, pause, rewind. You can work along with me, however you feel comfortable doing the class, but you can watch it over and over and get the hang of it. I love to teach, and I love being able to really get you excited and show you something new and add a new technique to your wheelhouse. And I think you're going to enjoy putting this together. I mean, how can you not? We're playing in fabric and we're dealing with beautiful colors. Oh, I love these. So the first thing you're going to need for this class is you're going to need the pattern. Okay, this is the pattern. You can get that off my website, melindabula.com, and just click on the shop and it'll take you over to my Etsy shop, where you can buy this pattern and all the supplies. You can also get a kit, and the kit has the fabric and the pattern together. You can get that. If you just want the pattern and use your own fabric, that's okay too. Feel free. I know you've got a stash, so you might as well use some of that fabric, and I'll show you how to pick the colors in just 1 second. The pattern comes with a lot of big pattern sheets. The pattern pieces are already drawn for you. You're just going to fuse your fabric and then lay these pattern pieces down on the fabric, right side facing up, and then you're going to cut somewhere close to that line. I mean, how easy can that be? Then, when we go to build the flower, we're going to put parchment paper over this large layout guide, which is, I'm not going to unfold the whole thing, it's like 32 inches by 32, which is the finished size of your quilt. But this is the layout guide, it's our map, and it's going to show us where we lay our pieces down. And there is kind of a trick to the order of assembly, which we'll go over, and you can see how I do that. Now, let's talk about some other supplies you might need. You're going to need some parchment paper, and you can either, I guess I should show that right side up. Okay. These are this is parchment paper. It's just parchment paper. You can get it aisle 7 at the Piggly Wiggly, or you can purchase this off my website too. These are large sheets that can be reused. It's just parchment paper, but they're super clear. We want to be able to see through them. And then we're going to press on that parchment paper, which is non-stick. And then we can peel up our flower and our pieces and arrange them on our background fabric. We do not start out with our background fabric. And you're going to need a background piece of fabric. I recommend let's make it bigger than it should be. And I think in the pattern I say I want it 37 by 37. I think that's what I want, or you could do 36 by 36. That would be big enough also, since fabric usually is, never mind. Just 36 by 36 would be a great square. It is a square quilt. You're going to need some pins, a lot of straight pins for doing the pattern. So we'll get some straight pins. You'll go through a lot. And you're going to need some nice scissors. I have a video on scissors. My favorite is the Karen K. Buckley scissor. It has a knife edge blade, which means when it gets built up with sticky fusible web, and it will, because everything gets sticky when you use Steam-A-Seam too, but it will keep cutting sharp even when it has buildup. If you have a pair of scissors that's a serrated edge, those little serrations will get filled up with sticky, and it won't cut sharp until you clean it. So you can keep cutting and you don't have to stop all the time and clean your scissors. So that's why I like Karen K. Buckley's scissors with the pink handle, or I like Ginger's, same thing. Ginger's do the same thing. So the thing that makes my technique unique is the fusible web that I'm using. Now I'm using Steam-A-Seam 2, not the light. Steam-A-Seam 2. There are probably, oh my gosh, there's got to be at least 15, 20 different fusible webs on the market nowadays. And they're not used for the same thing. So you need to, when you see your pattern and it says get this certain fusible web, you need to go get that certain fusible web, because that technique is based on that fusible web. And that'll save you a lot of money and headache along the way. So I use Steam-A-Seam 2. I've used it for almost 20 years. I'm using 6 yards, and I'm using the 12-inch wide. It comes in 12-inch, 18 inches wide, and I think 24 inches wide. It also comes in packages, but packages are kind of deceitful, because to equal 6 yards, you're going to need 5 packages of Steam-A-Seam. So you can either buy it in the yards or buy a bunch of packages, but it needs to be Steam-A-Seam 2. Okay? Now, the next thing we're going to do is talk about your fabrics. So let's say you want to make your own, use your own fabric, because I know you've got a big stash at home. And the key is the color chart that's in the pattern. Okay, this is the color chart. And the color goes with a letter. And all the pattern pieces that have like letter A on them, they'll use this fabric. And all the pieces that use color B, they'll use this fabric, and so on. And I'll show you how to make a color chart with either the kit fabric or your own when we start the class. But for right now, you're going to take this, the color chart, to your stash, to your drawers or your closet, and start pulling out fabrics that kind of look like this value. Okay, and if you'll notice here, do you notice how the petals, right, go all the way down to color F? Okay, color F. And they are going in a value range from light to dark. So if you were going to do purple, let's say, you would want to have a range from light to dark there. The center of the flower is made up with G all the way over to K. Over here. K right down here. Okay, that's what will make the center of the flower. Those all make up the center of the flower, from the shadow to the highlights to the little seeds in the middle. Okay, then we have a color L through O. Color L through O. Color L through O. Those are the tips of the petals. And we have light petals and we have dark petals, because we want to create the illusion of the petals receding and coming towards you, and then we get that three-dimensional painted look by that. Now the greens, we're going to deal with the greens last, and you can use any greens you want. I always like to add at the very end, I add this little turquoise color. Okay, turquoise is kind of a little sparkle, so find 5 greens that you like that go with your colors. And then we're going to make a color chart with your colors, or if you bought the kit, with the kit. And this will be our map. And as we get going, if the pins fall out, you will know what color C is by looking over at the color chart, and you can see that, oh, that's color C right there. And that is going to help you, trust me. Because once we get going, things become kind of a little bit of a mess. Maybe at my house only, maybe not at your house, but they do. So let's talk about the kinds of fabrics that you can use. I like to use batik fabrics. It gives me that watercolor painted look. And they can just be solid batiks. They can have a print on it. You know, I have in the kit, I have these really cool print fabrics. You can use, but that'll read as a soft peach color, even though it has that print on it. In fact, it kind of looks kind of neat having some of those prints on your flowers. So the thing that I don't use is I don't use solids. The solids just don't work. They're too flat. They're beautiful. They have such beautiful colors out there in solid fabrics, but they're more to be used for a piece quilt or a modern quilt, an abstract quilt, but they don't go to represent paint. And that's what we're doing. I'm representing paint with my fabrics. We're painting a painting without using any paint. That's what I'm doing. I don't have any paint on any of my quilts for the last 20 years. I can paint. I do have an art background, but when I started doing this, it was just like, could I do it without using paint? And guess what? So that's kind of my little shtick, and I'm sticking to it till they put me in the ground with a daisy on top. Okay, so I think that's all I have, and I think we can get started. Remember, if you have any questions, you can email me. The email's in the supply list, and I answer all the emails. So I want to help you, and we're going to have some beautiful flowers here, and I guarantee you this one will be an award winner. Thanks for joining me. Let's get going. Well, the first thing we need to do is make a color chart. All my patterns have a color chart. This is our guide. This is going to help you identify what fabric goes where. And so I'm going to show you how to make a color chart. Now, if you don't have the fabric and you're making your own color chart, you're just going to follow how the colors kind of relate to each other. You can see here the A is the lightest, and it goes down to H, which is the darkest. And then the I, J, and K, that makes up the center of the flower. The yellows go in gradation, so that's easy to do. And then we have our greens, and you can use any greens that you like with your flower. This I'm going to show you how to do the kit, and you can do the same thing with your fabric at home if you don't buy the kit. But here's first thing you want to do is we're going to open this out. We don't want to get this out of order, or you'll start crying and it'll be a mess. Okay, so first thing I do is I tip it upside down. I put my hand on the label and I flip it over and just peel the bag off. And this way, nothing gets out of order. Okay, you'll notice that we have a little color chart tab here. This is kind of like your post-it note. And if you are doing your own colors at home, you may want to get some post-it notes or make one of these for you. And as you can see, it goes from A down to T. And here's how we use it. So first of all, I'm going to get the greens. The greens are on the back. This label tells you what fabric is in the kit and a little bit about the kit. We don't need that anymore. Here's our greens, and we'll deal with those a little bit later. I like to separate my colors so I know nothing is hiding. We'll flip these back over. And the fold is always going at the top. And I kind of separate them a little bit if they got smushed. I just like to make sure nothing's hiding so we get them in the right order. Okay, that's looking pretty good. And then I'm going to take my tab here, cut off the name, and I'm going to put A there, B there, C, D, E, and so on, all the way down. I'm just going to go to H right here, okay? And then I'll do these later. So then I grab a pin, and I quickly pin it on. So in case the cat jumps up on the table or hurricane runs through the room, you just don't want these flying all over the place. You could use a wonder clip for this and just pin that on. Okay. Now, notice the pins that I'm using. I'm going to show you the difference between some of the pins that you want to use and pins that you don't want to use. Okay, infusible web. You do not want to use these beautiful, expensive glass head pins. These are made for fine applique. You know, applique with a needle and thread. Okay, and when you start poking them in through thick fusible web, they bend. But you do want to use like a flower head pin, which is sturdy, or one of these blue wiggly pins. You can also iron on these if you had to iron. And they're strong and sturdy and they won't bend as bad. So, and you're going to need a lot of pins. So now I have these pinned on, and I'm going to do the same for this and the same for my greens. But I just want to get you started so you can start making your color chart. Then I'm going to take my A fabric. You know, all the pattern pieces that this color goes to will have an A on them, and it'll correspond to this color chart. So I'm going to find the end of my fabric, and I'm going to cut a little square. Okay, this is the size of this. Then I'm going to use my glue stick, and I'm going to glue this in, and there we go. One color down. I'll set that aside. I'm going to do B, same way. Find the end of the fabric. You can organize your label later when we get started cutting out. But right now, you have this glued on. Now, a lot of times my students in class, when they leave like a retreat or a festival, they can't get to their pattern right away. And maybe you get interrupted here. And you come back to it a week, or let's say 2 years, and you want to finish it. Well, these will still be here on the color chart because they're glued down. But the pins have a funny way of wiggling out over time. You can't find, and then you don't know what color this is. What letter was this fabric? Well, you can go to your color chart and go, oh my gosh, that was C. Make another C, pin it on, and you can pick up right where you left off. That's why the color charts are important. So if you have any question, you know, what color it is, because the letter or no, the letter fell off. Get our D in here. Okay, now I also have made a chart, you'll notice in your supplies, that tells the amount in inches for all of these. So if you're doing this at home with your own fabric, look in your supplies, and you'll see that these, it isn't 1/4 of an inch, or I mean 1/4 of a yard here. It's more like a piece of fabric that's somewhere close to 11 by 12 inches. Okay, so that can help you. And then these are 1/2 a yard. We do use some 1/2 a yard. There's a lot here, and we want to have enough fabric for everything. So I've figured all that out for you in the kit. And so you can get that at on my shop, my Etsy shop, or go to my website. And then, but you can do this with your own fabric. I even made this one time in purple, and I'll insert a picture right here so you can see how I did it. Purples and reds. It turned out wonderful. But just know there's kits available, and you can use your own fabric. Okay, so I'm going to finish up my color chart, and I want you to finish up your color, making all your color chart, and then we'll get started on laying out our pattern. And on color A, you get a long piece. It's 44 inches long by 12 inches wide. And all our pattern pieces, here's our pattern. We've got a lot of A's. As you can see, there's a lot of A's in here. So we need that long fabric, which means I've got to put fusible web on this whole length of fabric, which sometimes is a pain. I have tried to take my long pieces of fusible web and lay them on perfect. Now here, well, when I haven't released the release paper, haven't pulled the release paper off, I can get it to lay just perfectly straight. But then when I go to take the release paper off, sometimes I can't line it back up straight again. So, you know,
I've only done this for 20 years. You'd think I'd have this down. So what I'm going to do is I'm folding the fusible web. I haven't taken the release paper off yet. I'm going to fold it in half so that I don't freak out because it's a lot of sticky. And I'm peeling up one release paper, and I'm going to lay just half of the sticky on at a time. And let's see if I can manage to get this on here. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I'm going to smooth it down halfway, and then I'm just going to keep peeling the release paper, smoothing, and oh, hey, we did pretty good here. So if you have a bubble anywhere in your fabric, you're just going to lift this up, smooth out the bubble, and put it back down, okay? And the paper sometimes gets air caught in between the paper and the fusible, so you can just smooth those out. Now I'm going to turn it over, make sure I don't have any, it doesn't look like I have any folds or bubbles, which doesn't mean there won't be some, because sometimes that just happens. I'm going to take my rotary cutter. That's why I like to prepare my fusible on my cutting mat. It's up high, so I don't have to bend over. And I like to get everything ready here before I go to the iron. The iron is soft. That board is soft and smushy. And a lot of times when you're trying to put the fusible web on at your ironing board, you will get a fold or a wrinkle. And it's really frustrating, especially when you're doing a long piece of fabric on a short little board. So we'll iron it over there, but I cannot. You see this white fusible that's hanging right here? We have to cut that off before we go and iron it. This, if it touches the iron, will turn to black tar on your iron, and it will get all over everything. So before we go to the iron, I'm just going to take my rotary cutter, go along that edge, and I'm going to remove this extra fusible web. So maybe I won't get tar or sticky goo on my iron. Not to say that you won't, because no matter how neat I am, there's always an oopsie that happens. So I'm going to go along the edge. There it is. Ah, there we go. Okay, let's flip it over. Okay, I would do it from the paper side first. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And I just would go back and forth like this with my hot iron, cotton linen setting. The first 7 pages, 1 through 7, will have the base petals. And how do you know they're a base petal? Because they have this rectangle around them and they say base petal. So you want to go through those first 7 pages and find all of your A pieces. The A stands for the color you're going to use, and that color is here on your color chart. And the number is where we're going to lay it down on our large layout guide, and I'll show you that later. Okay, so I'm going to find all my A pieces, and they're not, you know, some of the A's had to be put on page 7. So you need to go through and look. Like, here's some A's right here. Okay, my A's are going over here. This is all A's. Those are my B's and C's. This is all B. Here's some E's. We'll use those. Here's a D and an E. We'll be using those. And here is another A on page 7. Okay, so now I have all the A pieces. And then on my fusible fabric, I'm just going to start arranging them. These two, I can just kind of lay the whole piece of paper down. But if you are short of fabric and want to conserve and squeeze those pieces on, you may want to go around and just rough cut them out, removing a lot of this white paper. Okay, because that's giving the illusion that you need more fabric than you do. So I wanted to show you again. Here's my fused fabric. We just fused this fabric. And now, if you'll notice, I laid all the patterns on the right side of the fabric. Okay, on this long piece of fabric, all the pattern pieces are on the right side of the fabric. We do not draw on this back paper. We pin our pattern pieces on the right side of the fabric. And we do this for a couple reasons. First of all, if this was a beautiful hand-dyed fabric and had a lot of striations and little anomalies going on in the fabric, I could take my pattern piece, because my pattern pieces go in the right way, and I could fussy cut. I could find on that fabric the right place to cut the pattern piece. Number two, everything's going the right way because artists don't paint backwards. We paint seeing things the right way. So that's something that's different about my technique than others. Everything is going the right way. We want to always be looking at color 24/7, just like, you know, a mathematician looks at numbers 24/7. Well, an artist is dealing with color and space, and we need to be looking at the color all the time. We're putting our pattern pieces on the right side of the fabric, and I'll say that more, but if you do cut them out on the back, it won't work, okay? It won't work because it changes the perspective of how the flower lays. Okay, now we've got all our fabric labeled, but in your handout and in your supplies, you're gonna have a paper that says order of assembling and fusing. Okay, and so you can kind of conserve and not run out of fusible web. We're going to fuse and assemble in this order. And there's a little place where you can check off each letter that we do. I'm not going to do them with you. You're going to be doing them. You can stop and pause and rewind. Remember that. But here's the order of assembly. If I've got everything listed right, you're going to do your G color first. Then we're going to do F. Then we're going to do C. Then we're going to do A, B, then E, whoops, D, P, Q, R, S. And then we're going to take the flower and we're going to flip it on to the background fabric. And then, while it's on the background fabric, we'll add the other colors, which will be I, H, J, where's J, 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 K, L, N, O, then M, and the last one would be T. Okay, I hope that you will find your order of assembly and fusing, and we will start with letter G when we get back. So now we have our layout guide, and I have my parchment sheets, and I need to cover my layout guide with these parchment sheets. The parchment sheets are non-stick, a non-stick surface, so the sticky fusible web will not stick to it. We can also iron on the parchment paper, so when I get my pieces right where I want, I can press them gently with my iron and they will stick to the parchment paper, so they aren't all wiggling around. But what I do is I take my parchment sheets and I'm going to make one large pressing surface here, and you can pin, but I found using my stapler it works really well, so I can staple the edge. I'm going to staple a 1/4 inch seam all along the edge here. I'm going like every 3 inches with the staple. And so now I'm putting 2 of these sheets together to make one large sheet that will cover my whole layout guide. And then I'm going to fold it open over the staples And there you go. And I'm even going to take that little side piece and I'm going to staple it on the edge there. So my whole layout guide, if I get pressing and the paper is not covered with the parchment paper, the paper will stick to the fusible web and it does not come off. So you want to make sure that your whole layout guide is covered, because once you get started, little oopsies like that happen. So now we've got a large pressing surface that's non-stick. It's crystal clear. You can see through. You can see the markings of the pattern through. So this is just a real nice setup. So once you get your parchment over your layout guide, you're going to take some straight pins, and across the top of your layout guide, you're going to pin the two together so they will not wiggle. If they wiggle while you're assembling, you will get a wonky registration and it gets very frustrating. So I just pin it across the top in case I have to lift up the parchment to see what the numbers are. This helps me. Okay, now we're going to flip the parchment paper over and expose our layout guide. When I'm teaching a class, sometimes I see my students have a hard time seeing the difference between this piece, this piece, this piece, and this piece. And so a lot of times when I do a retreat, I have you bring some crayons or color pencils. And to make this easier on you, if you have that problem, all the C colors in this are this shaded line right here. But they didn't really show up as well as I would have liked them to be. And then these strips of color that are also shaded are not C, they're a different color. Go get a colored pencil or a crayon or even a regular pencil. A regular pencil will work too, because we're just going to darken in this area. Okay, do you see how I'm darkening that in? I'm not doing that piece. Okay, so here's what I'm doing, and you can see I'm going to go with my crayon. And of course I don't have a real crayon, so I'm using my art crayons, which are okay. And I'm coloring in this shape. Now it's going to be easy for me to find that when I go to put that on. I'm going to do it over here, and wherever it's shaded. And I'm going to give you a really good picture here so that you can use it as a schematic to help you. Okay. This is going to be my C color, which happens to be red, and I'm going to go all the way around the flower, coloring that in. I'm going to leave these pieces that are not connected. These shaded pieces are not connected to this color that's going under here. Okay, it's not connected. I'm going to leave those blank. Okay, but I'm going to go all the way around the flower here. This flower, it just goes in here to here, stops right there. Then on my top flower, it goes from up here all the way, all the way, all the way, and stops right here. And so I'm going to color all those in with red, and then I'm going to be back and show you what it looks like. Here I have colored everything in, and now it's going to be a lot easier for us to find our position on our flower. Now, you don't have to be perfect. You are not going to have perfect lineup when we start laying things down. We're going to get close. And even if you get close, you will have a beautiful flower. So the first thing we have to do is take and bring our parchment paper back over. Okay, so now, oh, look at that. That's so much easier to see, isn't it? Now it's time to put our centers of our flower on. Okay, this is flower number 1, flower number 2, and flower number 3. And so we're going to lay, this is my flower number 1, and I know, let me bring it over here. I'm lining them up. It fits right in there. Now what I'm going to do, take my iron. Now watch how I'm pressing. I'm not pressing on the edges. I'm just pressing right here in the middle so it melts to the parchment paper, okay? So I can still lift this up to put my pieces under, but he is stuck right there. Okay, this is flower number 3. That's this one right here. Flower number 3. And I'm going to line up his bumps. I'm going to look to see, ooh, that looks good. If you cut it out somewhere close to that line. So now on this one, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use the tip of my iron, and I'm going to kind of do a swirl in here, and it's melting the fusible web. It's sticking to the mat. Okay, yep. Let it cool. And I'm going to do the same with flower number 2. Finding out where all those little bumps go. No, that's not it. Maybe it's these bumps. No, not that. Maybe it's these bumps. Oh my goodness. You know, I could have drawn this a little better. Okay, there it is. So I'm going to take it and I'm just going to press around the middle so it will melt to the fusible web, or to the parchment paper, I should say. See, now I can lift up the edges and I'll be able to tuck my little veiny pieces in. Whoop. But it's still stuck. And look, it's not going to move. And that's what we want. So the next color that we need to add in is going to be our Fs. And you're going to need your schematic here. In fact, I'm going to, hopefully you can see that right there. And they would be, oops, they would be, these are the numbers. These little red numbers are the ones, these are your F color right here. And they're going to tell you, they kind of go in an order. Okay? And that's what we're going to go. Like this one says, wait, F36. So I'm going to look at my schematic here and find 36. 36 is right there. 36 is right up here. So I'm going to move this out. There it is, 36 right there. I can see it. And I'm going to lift this up and I'm going to align up these little white points as best I can. And there is 36. Okay? And I'm going to just reach in and find another one here. This one is number 35. I'm going to peel off the release paper. I'm going to look for 35. I'm going to look for it here on my schematic. And I'm going to look for it in this area. Here's 35 right there. Go. This is 35 right there. And this is my 35 piece. So I'm going to lift up this and I'm going to lay it. I'm looking at the white lines here. I'm going to lay it somewhere in those white lines. Kind of lining up. Move it around so it kind of, and depends on how you cut too, on how your lines are going to, but there we go. Okay, so this one is 25 and I'm looking at my guide again, looking at those, and there's 25 right there. There's 25 right there. Okay, let's zoom in again so you can see. Let's try it again. So here's 25, and you can also see it on your schematic here. And I'm going to lift this up, and I'm laying 25 in here. I want kind of the tips to kind of line up. And you can scoot in or out, and depending on how you cut. And I guess I didn't cut very good on this one, so I'm just kind of getting it so it looks like, hey, it covers all those open spaces. And then I'm going to put it right in here. And then I kind of press it with my fingers so it'll stick to the center. I'm going to grab another one. This one is called 26. So 26 is right here, right in here. And 26 has this little open space. So I'm going to lift this guy up and I'm going to put 26 in here. And I'm lining up the white, the little white tails in here. That looks pretty good. I'm going to lay that down. And they will sometimes overlap like that. But ooh, that's looking good. And there is a hole right here, so don't worry about that. And I'm going to work my way around, grabbing one. Here's number 23. Let's see where 23 is. 23, 24, 23. 23 is right there. Lift up my center. Lay down 23. I'm matching up the white. See the white in there? I'm going to cover up the white, I should say. And then I'm going to lay this back down. And there you go. We got another one in. Let's try one more. See if I can find another 20 here. Here's a 27. Okay. And it makes it so much easier since we colored those in red. I mean, I'm like, who designed this pattern? Oh, yeah, it was me. Well, anyway, so here's 27, here's 27, here's 27, and he covers a bunch of areas. So we want to cover up the white, and I'm covering up the white, and kind of has a curve, and then I'm going to lay them right down there. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, this one is pattern piece color F, pattern piece 24. 24 goes there. So I'm going to lay him in. I'm covering up the white parts. There we go. And there is a hole there. So don't worry about that. What's this one? This one's 29. 29. And this one is 28. So if we can find 29 to 28, I got this flower done. Here's 28. That's 28 right there. So we're looking at the white. You don't have to go in order. I'm just doing it because I'm showing you one flower at a time. You can hop all over if you want. That is looking good right there. Okay, there's supposed to be an open space and an open space right here and that little hole right there. That's absolutely the way it's supposed to go. So I'm going to hop over to this flower, number 2. I'm going to put in 30, what is this one? 33. And 33, is this 33? Yeah, 33 goes in here from right about there all the way over to 32. See, it's a big one. In fact, I'm just going to lay it on here like this, and then I'm just going to flip up. Did you see how I did that? Sometimes I will, just because this is glued in the middle, melted, it's not going to wiggle on me, I'll lay it how it should go, and that's looking pretty good. I'm holding my hand on it, and then I'm just going to flip this up and then back down on top of it, and it's perfect. And I'm going to shoot them with some steam. Probably should have tested the steam before I came over here, but let's just get them they can stick to each other right now, and that way it's not going to scare me that all that hard work will lose our registration. Sometimes kind of hard to find. He's right there, and he's just a little piece right there, and I take, because it has 2 little mountains, I put the biggest mountain covering up that piece, just like this back up. Now I find that it doesn't hurt my cutting table. I just shoot it with, I don't want to take this over to the iron because I might lose some of these pieces. So I'm just shooting it with steam right here on my table. And if you just do it quick like that, it's not going to melt anything or cause a fire. Oh, did I tell you my house burned down? Oh, well, that's a whole nother story. But anyway, Now, our next color, we're going to bring our C's over and start our C's. Well, here we are again, and now we're going to add our color C. And I'm going to start with flower number 3, just because it's the closest to me. And now the codes have changed. You're still going to need your layout guide. But if you'll notice on the C pieces, they have their number, like right here, it says C16. C16. And that corresponds to the number that's in the red box. Okay, so C16 will go on top of these petals over here on the petal number 16. Okay, we're going to put the veins in and then we'll come back later and slide the petals underneath. This is 16 and there is number 16 right there. That's what we're looking at. And so I know that this 16 piece, let's get it, this is our red. So this will be our red 16 and he will go in kind of covering up those red pieces. Now sometimes the veins don't line up. It's okay. But again, I'm going to lay it down and I'm going to flip this up and lay that back down. Did you see how I did? This is number 11. And number 11 is right here. I can see through the parchment paper because it's clear and I can see it on mine. And I know that it's going to lay right in like that. I'm just laying it on top. Then I'm going to flip up my F and my center and then plop them back down. And I found that is the easiest way to not disturb your registration and get a perfect fit, as perfect as you can with one of my palettes. Okay, so I'm going to do, this one is number 8. 8's over here because there's number 8 in the box. And so I'm going to lay number 8 on like this. He is kind of lining up with all my red that I colored in. And then I'm going to hold the tendrils and I'm going to lift up F and the center and flip them back down. That easy. 10 is right here. I can see that right there. Also looking over at my schematic. 10's going to go like this. Lift this up and lay that back down. There you go. 14. 14 is right here. 14. Because it says 14 right in that square right there. So I know 14 goes in here. And I'm looking at the red that I drew. I'm lining up the tips of those veins. And that looks pretty good right there. Problem is we got one long one there. So I'm just going to hold it on this side and flip all this up. And then you can kind of adjust it a little bit. There you go. Just that easy. So let's start putting some of our petals on. And again, remember, got a great schematic right here. Okay, so now we're going to be referring on the schematic. When we put our petals down, we're going to be looking at those numbers in the rectangle. Or you can look at these rectangles. We're going to look at the rectangles that are right here and right here, all along. All these petals have that rectangle. It says base petal, and this would be a B4. They all have that. Here, the little tendrils are covering it up, so you may have to lift it up and go, okay, that's A13 base petal is going to go right underneath all of this. We're going to have to lift all of these up to slide that under. But because we've pressed them, they're going to stay together, which is really nice. And I keep this right by me. So this one is A14, and we just saw A14 was right here. So I'm going to take my fingers, I'm going to gently lift this up, and I'm going to put A14 down here. And I'm matching up the outside petal shape right here. Put it in, make sure that it's in that dark line at the tips, just covering it. I'm going to hold it, and then I'm going to put my little veins back down. I have one petal in. My next petal is number 20. And 20 is way over here. This is 20 up here. And there's number 20. So I'm going to put so it must go like that. You could also line up the outside edge with your hand, then reach your finger or your stiletto in, flip everything up, making sure that all your little things didn't flip under. And there you go. I've got that one in. And we're just going to move around the flower. I'm not going in any real order. This is number 15, and 15, 13, 14, and this one says 15. I can lift up all of these petals, lay my my piece in like this, make sure that it's underneath there, lined up, and then I'll flip these guys right back down. This is number 11, and number 11, it's easier to see it on here. Now I'm going to do my bees. This is number 8. Oh, 8 is over here. 8, 8. Here's 9. Got one flower done here. That's looking good. This is number 4. 4 is right over here. This is number 5. I'm gonna lift these guys up. Put 5 right in here, matching up the outside edge, but the A goes on top. So you want to make sure that that A right there goes on top. B3. Whoops. B3, you're over here. Slide it in. Come on. There we go. Okay, now that is an E. I'll get my E. Now we're going to other colors. This is an E2. These are darker in the shadows. So this is going to be E2, and it fits somewhere in like that. E2. We're going in close here so you can see E1, and E1 is this weird shape. But this bump right here goes right in there, like that, just like that. So I hold it, I lift all of this up. Oops, try it again. There you go. And then these go back down on top. And there we go, we got it. And then lay those back down. And you got that E1 in there. So I wanted to show you, I had a little correction. The correction was taped on the outside of your pattern, so that hopefully you got it before you opened your pattern. And I just wanted to show you where E7 goes. If you didn't get a correction, you've had the pattern before, you'll have two E7s. One is the right E7, this one, and this one is supposed to be E22. So let me show you where they go on the layout guide right now so you won't get confused. This is E7. I'm just going to lay it right here without the parchment so you can see. And E7 goes right in here and will lay just like that. And then these petal pieces right here will go over him. And then E22 goes up here. And then this is where E22 goes. That's E22. And then E22 lays in just like that. So those are your two corrections and where they go. Hope this helps. We're not done yet, but we're going to start adding the leaves, and then when we get the leaves on, we're going to switch this over to a background fabric and then finish all the detail work with it on our background. That way we can remove the parchment paper and see all these little details really good. Okay? That's what we're going to do. Whoops. But first, thank goodness this reminded me, we need to press all of these together. Okay? Make sure that these three petals, these are up on top, so you can kind of still move everything. Once we switch it over to the background fabric, it has a whole different look. Now you have some pattern pieces that fit down here in the corner. We're not going to put those on. Let's see, can we put those on? I don't think so. Yeah, we can. We can put those on. I'm looking to see if something overlaps it. Are there other pieces that are going to overlap this so everything will stick together when we transfer it over to our background? And it is. So I'm doing my pea color first. And my pea colors are in the corners. And they say top left corner, bottom left corner. This is top left corner. So that would be right here like that. And I'm working right under air conditioning unit. And so I'm going to give it a little press because it's not sticking real well. Sometimes in winter too, you'll have things that won't stick so well. This one says the bottom right corner. So I'm going to put him in here. I'm going to also press him so he'll stick. It won't give me any hassles. This piece is the lower left, so I'm putting him in here, lower left, that. go. And there's a P, and the P says 93. So I need my guide. I'm going to look for petal 93, and petal 93 is right there. Does it go that way? Yeah, it goes this way. And it goes underneath. These go underneath. I'm not doing these little tiny pieces until we get them to the back. These are little veins that will go in our petals. I'm not going to put those on until we switch our flower to our background fabric so I can see where everything goes a little bit better. So just do the big petals. We're going to flip this and put it on a background fabric. So think about what kind of background fabric you want to put this on. Okay, so I've pressed and I use steam, and now I'm going to lift this up off of my paper pattern. I'm going to remove my pins that I had at the top. Underneath here, let's get all those pins out. We don't need those anymore. Okay. I like to get it going the right way. I'm looking at it, and now I'm going to take my whole thing, including the back paper, and I am going to flip it upside down. Yes, you saw me do that. I'm going to take off the paper pattern, and now I'm going to gently peel up. Hey, a staple stuck right there. I'm going to gently peel up my flower. Now, I go from corner to corner. Okay, lifting up, holding it. Now, it's going to stick to you. So you may, if you have two people, that'll help. I usually just hear it by myself. But if you go slow, you're going to peel this. Peel the parchment up and off, and the back of your flower will be exposed with the sticky poking up, or facing up, I should say. Make that leaf stay down there. Stay down. Stay down. Oh, look at that. So right here, with my cutting mat, I can kind of line things up along these lines here, how I want it. Now I'm going to take my background fabric, and my first one I used just plain old black. but boring. So I've cut my fabric. The width of it is a yard. I cut it a yard wide, and it's 44 inches long. And it's this really cool fabric. I have it on my website. It's called Friendly Garden. And I'm going to find which side I like to be. It's kind of a black with a blue tint, but a real dark, dark black with a blue tint and purple dots like raindrops. So let me show it up here. So I think this could be a really cool fabric for this colorway. So I'm just going to take and put the seam, the press line in the middle of my quilt. Flip this up. That should be enough to get you started. And then I just am moving the wrinkles out. Here's a little wrinkle I got. Just lightly tug it. Okay, now is that the right side? I think that this is the right side and this is the wrong side. Check out your batik, but look at how easy I can take this off now. And that is, if you want to audition a bunch of colors, okay, we can place that leaf on later. If you want to try your flower on other bunch of fabric, this is the time to do it. So I now going to do it again. Lay this. Okay, here we go. Lost a leaf. We'll readjust. There we go. Okay. Now, if you wanted to, you could press this, but if you want to try another color, and now, because it's sticking, I can hold this and we can flip it back over. And there's our flower on this background fabric. And now you can kind of readjust your leaves because they're not pressed. And ooh, I do like this background fabric. And I lost a leaf over here, and I think he goes like that, so we'll put him on. We can kind of adjust some stuff and make it look a little more straight. Oh, I really like the colors because we have taken the flower now off of this. We can build our center and see, it's so easy. And then we can put all these veins and the little tips all along our flower very easily, being they're all numbered. And we can get a great flower. You can put your veins in. I'm gonna put my veins in also. And I'm just gonna start playing around and putting things on. And you can watch me do it. So I'm going to start with flower number 3, and I'm taking my center, which is color I, and I'm going to lay it on the paper like it would go on here. And then I have it going the right way. Then I can just lift this up and bring it over here. And I kind of can see that this V right here goes in between 9 and 10. So I'm kind of putting it right in like that. Then the next thing we have is we have our J color. It's a kind of a chocolatey brown, and I want to know, does it go that way? Does it go this way? It goes that way. Okay, so I'm going to leave it over to the side, and then we have this little center, like little seed pods. I'm just going to lay it in the center and take it on over and put it in kind of like that. I now have one of my centers in. Flower number 2 needs to go in. Okay, here we go. It goes in like that. So I'm just going to take this and I'm going to come right over to here. I'm going to put this down like this. That looks good. And then this piece goes like that. Put that in like that. And then this little guy, I can just lay him anywhere inside there. Now we have two. Woohoo! I'm going to do the same. Once you have everything already cut out, it goes pretty fast. So this one goes kind of sideways like this. Is that the right way? Yeah, like this. So I can just bring it on over. Got the registration there. And then this guy goes like that. That was wonderful. Look at that. Okay. Okay, so now we got to add this color H. This is like our shadow. And we need to add those on our flower because they add a lot. So I'm going to take, this one out here is H. Let's see, it goes in like that around the edge. Okay, so I lay it on this. And then I can kind of get the registration on my flower. Let's bring this up here so you can see. So we know it's going to go on the edge and over right here. So it's kind of right by our hole right here, right there. So I know it goes somewhere in like that. And then this goes around like that. And it's kind of casting a shadow all around that edge right there. Ooh, that looks good. I'm going to do the same thing. This is H2. H2 goes here. There's one that goes here, okay, along the edge. And there's another one. I think there's two. There's a little one and another little one. There's this H2. And there's this little H2 that goes right here. And it looks to me like these kind of get tucked underneath. So let's see how they would work. So this guy goes right in here. So you can lay it on top like that. I think that's perfect like that. And this little guy, he could go kind of underneath here if you want. That little darker area. And this one goes right in here. But it goes along the outside of this edge. So we want to make sure that he's on the outside of that edge. Here's a picture of color H laying right on the edge of the center color G. It's just right on top and on the edge. So now I'm going to put some of the yellow tips on. And the first one I'm just grabbing them in random order, but this one says that it is number L. It's 47. And here's 47 right in here, which goes on number 15. So I know this is 15, this is 47. You're going to be using this and this, but I think this bigger one is a lot easier to see. Number 53, and 53 is right there. Okay, this one is number 41. 41 is right up here. I'm just going to lay them on here. I just think sometimes that's easier. This is number 40. 40. 51. 51 is right here. So I'm just laying them down on my master sheet. 45. 45 would be right here. 46. Oh, I think that's 46 and it doesn't have a number on it. Yep, that's 46. 66. 66 is right there. What we have to do now is we have to put some water in your iron, and we're going to steam. I'm going to show you how to press so you don't end up with the whole flower on the bottom of your iron, okay, which I have done. Okay, so what I do is I start in the middle of each flower, and I'm just going to pat, pat, pat. Do you see how I'm doing that? From the center out. And stitching it. Okay, so that looks like it's not going to fall off. So now I'm going to flip it over. And now when I flip it over, now I can really start pressing. Okay, and use your steam. Okay, and this is where you can now go over to your iron and really steam it. I'm doing that right now. Okay, so I pressed it there. Now I can flip it over and I can take it to the iron. It's not flopping anywhere, and I can do it again. Okay, the one thing I like about steam too is you can iron it over and over. And when we start to do the thread play, we're going to iron it over and over again. Okay, a lot of fusible webs, you cannot iron it that much. In fact, my quilts, my finished quilts, when I steam them, they get softer and softer over the years. I don't use the light. Remember that, I don't use the light because the light will fall off. Okay, but the Steam-A-Seam 2 stays. Okay, go ahead and press your quilt, and then we'll be back for more. So now you're going to need a rotary cutter, and you're going to need a long blade. And if you have a big cutting mat like this, do a little cropping, and I'll show you how I do this. I'm not going to go in and crop this right up against the flower right this minute, because that's going to cause me some problems. I want to slowly work my way into the edge, because you can see how the pattern kind of was cropped off here as you put it together. But I want to make sure we get this square, so I like to play a little game with myself. I kind of line up the edge of the fabric here, and then I'm going to start cropping in. I'm getting this line right here close to that line. It's a little bit off. And I'm going to put my ruler, right lined up with these lines. I'm going to take my number 3 line right here, and I'm going to line it up with the lines on my mat. Okay, and I'm going to just go in because I want to get rid of some of this excess fabric. Now, I found a trick. You know how it wiggles, how I started to cut here and this started to wiggle? I found a trick by watching YouTube. And that if you have your hand half on the ruler and half on the table, it holds the ruler straight and it won't wiggle. Did you see that? Also, having a nice sharp blade would be a good idea too, Melinda. But now I know I've got a straight edge right here. And on my table, I a lot of times have to walk around, line it up with those numbers, and then putting my hand half on the ruler and half on this, and I can go in and cut that. There we go. So I'm going to go all the way around, not moving my quilt, and I'm going to cut it and crop it about an inch away from the design. Okay, here smoothed out my batting, and I put it on top of my backing fabric, which is the same fabric I use for the background of my quilt. I like to always do that. And then I'm going to take my quilt, smoothing out. I even ironed it. Get some of those folds out. And then I'm going to take my flower, and I'm going to lay it in the center of this. Now my backing fabric is bigger and my batting is bigger than my quilt that I've cropped. So, you know, you want to make sure you cut a little bit of extra. What happens is, as we start to sew, the top with all this fusible is going to start shrinking. And so is the batting, and so is the backing. And they start shrinking at different levels. You've got, remember, we got a lot of stable, hard, fusible web here. So it's going to shrink in at one rate. Batting will shrink in at another rate. And then the backing fabric will shrink also at another rate because there are three different materials going on. This is why you are noticing I'm not using a spray-based. Spray-based doesn't work on this. Now my traditional quilting, it works, but because this is hard fusible, it causes a lot of problems, which happens, this will shrink up, and then the batting will shrink at a different rate, and next thing you know, I have a fold in my batting underneath my quilt. So I stopped using the fusible, I know fusible batting, and I don't put fusible on any of these. No fusible spray and no fusible web, okay? Fusible web is just under my cut pieces up here. So all of them are layered together. I'm using Quilter's Dream 100% cotton batting, and I use their lowest loft, which is called Request. And it does matter what kind of batting you use. Batting also, the more thread you start to put in it, the harder it will start to get. Stiffer, that's the right word. It'll start to get stiff. The Quilter's Dream stays loose and floppy. It also stretches. So if I've got it tight right here with thread, and over here it's loose and maybe bubbling up where no thread has been, I can kind of stretch my quilt and press that with the iron, and I can stretch the batting and distribute that bubble area out. Okay, this is two steps for basting. I do a basting with straight pins, medium-sized straight pins, and then I'm going to come back in and do, removing my pins, I'm going to do a basting on the sewing machine, which I really love to do now. It really holds all the layers stable, all three, the batting, backing, and top, anchors them together so that I can now stitch wherever I want. And I can hop from place to place to place. I don't have to start in the middle and work out. I can start wherever I want to start. So that's why I use this technique. So when I'm putting my pins in, I just put them in. I start, you know, one in the middle. Now you've got to get, because you're going through fusible web, you've got to go get some medium-sized to large safety pins. Don't use those little copper or silver or gold ones, because those won't go through the fusible web. They'll break. And so I'm going about every, I don't know, what's that, 7 inches. I'm going to put and I'm poking it right into my quilt mat. I can feel that I'm hitting my quilt mat here. I'm going to go around, start in the middle and kind of work out. And sometimes wherever there's not a lot of fusible, that's where I stick. In between these two flowers, that's where I'm sticking the pin, because it's easy to get it in. And I'm smoothing the whole time. Okay, I've got it all pinned. There you go. And then I'm going to take my scissors here, and I'm going to, let me get you so you can see this. Take my scissors, and I'm going to cut leave about 1.5 inches, 2 inches all the way around. So I've left about 1 inch from the design all the way around on the quilt top. And now I'm cutting away the batting and the backing fabric about 1.5 inches. We don't need all that extra stuff getting in our way, but we do need a little bit of it for shrinkage. Well, today is thread play day, and we're going to get all our supplies together to work on our thread play. I call my technique Renegade Thread Play, basically because when I started to do this, I couldn't do traditional quilting. Now remember, I started doing this about 20 years ago. And, I couldn't do the traditional quilting, didn't work on this thick fusible web. So I had to figure out what would work. What I want to do is I want to blend one color into another color, and then the threads kind of blend in. I cross over, and I found out that I could soften the hard edges of the fusible web by sewing outside or off the line of that fabric. And it just softens and kind of brings all the little bits of chunks of cut fabric, kind of connects them all. The thread kind of connects them and makes them, kind of turns them into a tapestry. You know, kind of weaves the color together. So that's what I'm doing. I'm coloring with the thread. I'm going on top of my already cut pieces, and I'm adding another dimension, another coloring technique. And so I envision that these are my colored pencils, and you're going to need a lot of colors. If you have colored pencils, you're going to need a lot of colors. So let's start out, first of all, the thread I use. Okay, the thread I use Sulky Rayon thread. Okay, Sulky. Do you see how it's shiny here? I like the shine. The shine catches the viewer's eye and attracts them to the stitches on my quilt. And I just love that shine. I used to use 30 weight. They don't make 30 weight thread anymore. 30 weight would be thicker. So I went out and I tried all kinds of different kinds of threads on my fusible flower quilts. And I ended up coming back to Sulky Rayon 40 weight thread. This is 40 weight thread. Good thing about 40 weight, it comes in a bazillion colors. So that's a good thing, because if you've got all these colors, in your quilt, you're going to need all these colors of thread to go with it. Okay, you'll notice I'm not using a variegated thread because I want to put peach color on my peach. I want to put light yellow where light yellow goes, and I want to put dark burgundy where dark burgundy goes. But I have to tell you, here's one right here. The variegated thread that does work, I don't know if you can see this, is greens. For some reason, the greens are like magic. So when you're doing your leaves, the green goes in and out, and it starts changing colors, and it kind of makes the leaf look like it's turning over. It gives some amazing dimension. So I highly recommend variegated for the green. For this, I may use some of this. We'll see when I get over to the sewing machine. But I picked out some greens, that I think will blend well with the greens. And I even think, because in the kit, if you buy the kit, I have this little turquoise color. I always love to add turquoise on my leaves because the turquoise, I call these sparkle colors. Sometimes orange is another good sparkle color. And it just sparkles and adds a real neat highlight to greens. Okay, so then I've got to get some yellows, and since I have, some light, some dark, and some goldy. In fact, I could even use this goldy on this brown thread right here. That would be good there too. So I'm going to use about 3 yellows. Then I've got my browns. So I'll use this gold on this fabric. And then I'll use this brown on both of these colors right here, if you can see that. And then I've got some burgundies. So I picked a light and a dark burgundy. And I think those will work well. And I think I'm going to put this color also on this darker color. I think those will work great. So we got that. I've got kind of a cherry red, and then I've got a darker red that'll be good for both these colors. And then the cherry red will kind of be here. Then I've got this pink, and then I have this like peachy color. And then you need something for your background fabric. On my background fabric is kind of a bluey black, and the black seems to work the best for that color. On my original quilt, I just put it, my background fabric was just a solid, I think it was a Kona cotton black, and the flower just popped off. There's not a lot of background showing, so you could get away with putting it on just a solid, clean, flat black. That would look great. Now, to be able to use rayon thread on your sewing machine, there's some tricks that I've learned over the 20 years that I've been forcing this delicate thread through thick fabric. That's what we're doing. We're going to puncture with this needle, and we're going to have this really delicate thread. Rayon thread can easily break. It's a decorative thread. It's for embroidery. It's not for sewing the bottom of your jeans and then bending over. You will have a problem because see how easily it breaks, and it shreds up. But it doesn't if you know how to treat it right. So the key is the right needle, and the needles that I'm using, and this is in your supply list, is a top stitch or denim needle, and you need either an 80-12 or a 90-14. I start out with an 80-12, that's the size down here. You need the name and the size. They go together for what we're about to stitch through, which is thick fusible web. Top stitch, a lot of people, if you aren't a garment sewer, you may not know, but a top stitch needle is designed to go through thick men's wool suiting that has a thick buckram interfacing in it. And they would fold the fabrics over. It's got that interfacing. They fold the fabrics over a couple times, and then they would do a little pinstriping right here of thread. And that needle has to pierce all this thread. Well, we're going through batik fabric, which is a tight weave, and we're going through fusible web. So the shaft of the top stitch or the jeans denim needle is designed with a bigger eye to let the delicate thread go through, and it has like a groove in the shaft to handle thick fabrics, and it's sharp. Okay, so you need that needle. If you're using rayon thread, you need this needle. No other needle's going to work. It'll all shred up on the tip of your needle if you don't use the right needle. Okay, that's why you're getting frustrated using rayon thread or sewing through thick fabric. The other thing that I use is it's a machine sewing aid called Sewer's Aid. Most quilt shops have this. You can buy it online. I have it in my Etsy shop. It is what I put on all my spools of thread before I start to sew. It's a lubricant for your thread. It does not hurt your sewing machine. I was sewing on the same sewing machine for the last 15 years using this product, and did not hurt my Bernina sewing machine at all. So what you do with this, after you wind your bobbin, you're going to wind your bobbin first. Okay, wind your bobbin first. Then you're going to take your thread, and you're going to put, I will show you up here. Let's see if I can do it without my hands in the way. I'm going to put a bead here. Okay, and you can kind of let it soak in. And then I'm going to do another bead here, all the way to the end, and just put 3 or 4 of these, and really get it around the edge here, because sometimes it gets tight, wound tight right along the edge here, that rayon thread. So I let it kind of ooze into the fibers, and then I take it and I kind of help it by squishing it, smushing it, and now I will thread my sewing machine. Another thing that you want to do is you want to remove this label. Okay, so remove this label, because every time you pop this on your sewing machine spool holder, the goo from the sticky from this label starts building up. And I found that my thread wasn't spinning off the spool like it was supposed to, gently, because the spool couldn't spin because of all that buildup that was on my dowel. So clean that off and always take your label off. Okay, the size and the color are all right here. So you don't have to worry about keeping that label. Somebody in one of my classes keeps all the labels of the thread. That's just way too much for me. Okay, so now my thread is coated. I can go and thread my machine, and I'm ready to go. So the sewer's aid and the needle are what is going to help you sew through your sewing machine. Now you're going to need your free motion foot for your machine. These are my two for my Bernina. I have a Bernina 765 right here. I love Bernina machines. I have had them. They have a strong motor to pierce through the thickness of the fusible web. Okay? You're also going to need something on your hands when you do free motion quilting. Free motion quilting is you are moving the quilt underneath the needle. Okay, and we drop the feed dogs. There's a button on the side of my Bernina I push, drops those teeth that are there in my sewing machine that move the fabric. Now my hands move the fabric. And these have the little rubber dots, and they help you grip your fabric, your quilt, and push it through and glide it through. Really does make a difference when you have something on your hands. Some people use finger cots, some people, a lot of different things that you can use to glide your quilt through the needle and make more even stitches with something there. Now, it's hot here in Bakersfield. These get really hot, and I'm changing my color of thread and bobbins a lot. Do you see how many bobbins I have? A girl can never have too many bobbins, or boy. Okay, so I found, and Diane Godinsky used to use this all the time too, and she was if you don't know who she is, you can Google her, if you can spell her last name, Diane Godinsky, and fine hand whole cloth machine quilter. She was an award winner, gosh, maybe 10 years ago. She would just win all these awards. So I put a little bit of this, but this is what she used to get control of her quilt, to do these fine, delicate stitches and designs. She would use Neutrogena Extra Dry Hand Cream. Now, it's got a lot of something in it. I don't know what, but it kind of makes your fingers kind of tacky. It does not leave a residue. Rub it in. Rub it all the way in. Okay, plus you should have nice, soft hands. I don't, but you should. But it leaves this little kind of lanolin tackiness so that I can grab my quilt and smoothly glide it under the needle. Okay, so that's one of the things I use because I'm constantly changing my thread. That means I have to slip these on and off. Although I was given these gloves and the fingers are cut out. This could be a better option. I'm always trying new things. That's what you got to do. Try the new products and see, because there's so many things to make your job easier when you're doing thread play. Now, we're going to talk about, you need to have some snips close to your sewing machine because you're going to be cutting a lot of thread. So what I do, up on my pin on top of my, where I wind the bobbins, that little bump, that you put your bobbin on, I lay this on top in that little, pointy thing. Well, I can't think of what the name is, but I have my scissors there. And I like, these are the Karen K. Buckley. Do you see how they have a curved tip? So I can take them, I can push them down hard, all the way down on my quilt, and clip that thread right there on top. And then if I happen to drop them on the floor, they have a red handle and I can see them easily because I'm old. Okay, let's just face it, older. So I like these scissors. I have them on my website too. So these are the supplies that you need. Now I'm putting the same color thread in the bobbin that I have on top. And I'm putting the fabric on my back of my quilt, you saw, is the same color as on top. So I'm making kind of a little thread painting. Let me show you what that thread painting looks like, because right here I'm going to insert it. This is the back of my original Texas Wildflower quilt. And you can see there's a lot of colors, and it just makes this pretty little thread painting on the back of the quilt, which I love to do. And I'm going to show you how I'm doing that. You can put any thread on the back, any fabric you want on the back of your quilt. If you don't want to deal with stitches on the back of your quilt, I recommend finding a busy print. Let me see if I have one here. Like this. Put that as the backing fabric on your quilt. I think this is a tulip pink. Okay, and then I would use Aurifil 100% cotton in my bobbin. I would wind 5 spools of this thread and just use that in my bobbin and just change the color on the top. Aurifil 100% cotton, the 50 weight, works really good with the rayon thread on top. You don't want to use a slick, shiny thread, like bottom line thread is too silky and smooth for getting an even thread tension with the slippery rayon thread on top. So you want it like an Aurifil would be perfect, because it has a little bit of a nub, it grabs the silky thread, and you can get a nice even tension. The only thread tension that we're going to deal with on our sewing machine is our top thread tension, and I like to loosen my thread tension. Manufacturers put it at like 4 or 5. That's for garment sewing or drapery sewing, just regular sewing. When you do a free motion, you're pulling and pushing the fabric underneath that needle, and you need the thread to be loose. So to loosen your thread, you will go down to a 3, 2, 1. I start out, my machine is set, factory set at like a 5, and I do like a 3.75. And that's how I start out. It loosens the thread, and it's sometimes easier when you're going back and forth, pushing your thread through the machine. So this is all the stuff I use, and let's get stitching and make a beautiful quilt. So here I am at the sewing machine, and I've put in a bobbin, and it is matching this thread. I have a new needle on, and I've cleaned out my machine. I do that every time I get ready to quilt a new quilt. So now we need to drop our feed dogs, which are those teeth that pull the fabric, and get those out of our way. And something else I like to use is Supreme Slider. And what it does is, let me roll this back up. This is how I take my thread in and out. I just keep rolling it in and out of my way, change my bobbin, then roll it back down. But what it does is it puts this plastic over all of this rough metal. And as you're sewing with your rayon thread, and it's on the back of my quilt, this is like a knife edge right here, and it cuts and shreds the rayon thread, so it doesn't look very pretty. Sometimes it really cuts it strong. So I use the Supreme Slider, and then there's no hard edge for my thread to get caught on. So now let's thread the machine. I have pink thread on, and that's so that you can see. And I'm going to go down, and get my bobbin thread, bring it up. I always do that, or I try to always do that. Let's see if it will do that for me. There we go. Bring my thread up to the top so I don't have a nest. Now this first thing that I'm going to do, this first stitching that I'm going to do, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around, I'll use this right here, I'm going to go around the outside edge of this brown piece. Not on it, just up against it. Okay, I call it the stitch in the ditch because when you go just up against it, that thread will hide. Now, if I was doing this normally, I would use probably a purple thread, but I want you to see where I'm going. I'm going to go all the way around this, and it's going to lock in all these layers with the sewing machine. And then I'm going to kind of come out in a couple places before I start coming in and coloring. So I call this my Renegade Thread Play, and I'm going to go, I got my feed dogs down. Okay. And if you can see, I'm just going up against the edge, and I'm not going really fast, am I? Now, when I get over to this pin, oh, I need my needle down. You need to have your needle in the down position. I'm going to take this pin out because I'm coming up to it. I think I'm going to take this pin out. There we go. As I come to each of the pins, I take them out. Okay, so here we go. I'm just rubbing my needle right up against the edge of that brown fabric. Now when I get scared, I stop. And if your needle is in the down position, it will hold your quilt. So you can turn it and adjust it. And we're always kind of rolling it on this end that goes underneath the sewing machine. So I'm kind of rolling it up. This is my thread tension on my Bernina. And I don't want it at a 525 because that is, 525 is for regular sewing. We're going through thick fusible web, so I'm going to reduce it down to, I'm going to start at a 350. What that does is it's opening up the thread discs that are up in here, and it's allowing the thread to not be too tight, which sometimes going through fusible web, being too tight causes us a lot of problems. So, hey, we did that pretty good, huh? There we go. My thread tension is a lot better now at that number. Now, I can't give you the precise number to use for your sewing machine. You have to find that right number. But can you see how I'm going around? And as I get sewing and coloring with my thread, the fabric will shrink. Whoops. The fabric will shrink, and that thread will tuck under those pieces. And listen to the sound that I'm doing. It's going slow, isn't it? I'm not going fast. Boom, back where I started. Okay, so there we did the stitch in the ditch around that center piece. Now here's how I cut my threads. I'm going to lift up on the presser foot, and then I lift up on my needle, bring it to the highest position you can get it. Then I bring my thread to me, and I'm going to give it a little tug. And if you can see, where's my little snippers? There is, because I didn't cut this one or this one earlier. Let me get those out of the way so you can see. But right here, when I gave it a little tug, the bobbin thread popped up right there. So I can go in with these little curved tip snips. I can pinch really close. And I cut the bobbin thread and the top thread with the same snip. How's that? And now there's no tails on the back of my work. Now, after I've been stitching for a couple hours, I will go over and I will press all of this with my hot steam iron. And the heat will reactivate the glue. The glue will stick to the thread now. And now the thread is permanently embedded in your quilt. I know. It's worth the money you paid for this class, right? Okay, so now I've done that. And I know I have it adhered there. Now I want to go out along this edge. I'm going to just go out along the outside of the petals, and I think I'm going to just start right here. I'm just going to go. Get those out of the way. And I'm going to come all the way down here. I'm going to bring this out so you can kind of see there. I'm smoothing it. with my hands. Sometimes by accident I go on the piece. It's not going to hurt anything later. This is Renegade Thread Play. We run with scissors and we color outside the line. And here we come to another pin, so I'm going to remove it. And I'm just going to continue all the way around. Whoops, this will happen a lot. Lift it up. Tuck it back down. There you go. The white lines in the picture here show where I did the stitch in the ditch. I did one flower at a time, and I did not do the leaves. So go ahead and do your stitch in the ditch. Okay, after I've done all the stitch in the ditch, now I'm going to come in and I'm going to do some veining in these big petals with my peachy color. It's kind of a light peachy. I think a pink would also work on this too. We'll see. If I don't like it, we'll change it. But I'm going to start here and I'm going to mimic the veins. And what I'm following is I'm following the shape of this curve, the shape of this curve, how it comes in and transitions into the red, the pink that is making, those are all telling me how to curve my stitches. Okay, I have my speed on my sewing machine. I have it on a medium fast. Here we go. Okay, where that bright pink, oh, it was right in front. Where that bright pink is, I have stitched on it with the peach thread, but I am going to come back with a darker pink. But if you'll notice, when I go into the yellow, I'm going off into the yellow and a little bit into the red. It just starts blending the colors into each other. Now if I want to come over here, I'll lift up my thread, lift up my needle, and I'll come over here. Okay, as long as I know I'm not going to drive over this little thread right here. And there we go, I can start right here. And when I'm transitioning from this petal to this petal, you start focusing on how's this petal curving. And there you go. You're done. Okay, new color of thread using for the pink petals. Now, if you get sticky buildup right away, like first minute you're sewing on your needle, that means you haven't pressed down the layers enough. So take it out of the machine. You can just clean off your needle. Then you can put some sewer's aid on it. And then press it again and come back and start sewing. If you've been sewing for, let's say, 3 hours non-stop and you get sticky on your needle, that means you've been doing a good job, because you can't avoid not having sticky on your needle. It just happens. But you just kind of pick it off, put some sewer's aid on your needle, and continue. But if you have that sticky right from the beginning, that means you haven't pressed it enough. Okay, when you've been sewing for 3 or 4 hours, your needle gets hot, and so will attract some of the sticky on here. It has never hurt my sewing machine, and you just pick it off. But if it happens at the very beginning, then we have trouble. That means you didn't iron it. So let's start sewing again on the pink here. Same action, back and forth, up and down. It's a real complicated, you know, there's no straight line, so you always kind of want to do a curve. So remember that part. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around and I'm going to mimic this curve. I'm kind of doing an echo stitch right in this area. Okay, and that's how I finish that area and the brown area also. It's just kind of mimicking this wiggly outside edge as best I can. Okay, I'm going to do some veins right here. And once you get going, you don't want all this extra quilt flopping around. So what I do is I'm rolling it up. Okay, and I'm going to put some of these, well, here they are. They're the big Wonder Clips. I'm going to put a couple around here, kind of at the end, where you can kind of see. Kind of hold the wad together. while I start quilting. On a small quilt like this, they work really good. Okay, so now I can get started doing the veins, and we're going to do the dark burgundy ones first. Okay, now did you see how I went down and I put a little bit of that burgundy down along the edge here? So I'm kind of sewing off the edge, and then I'm going back up. And I like to get my head right into that sewing machine so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm just going back and forth. And as it gets smaller, my stitches get narrower. And then as it gets longer, I bring it down longer. And then we'll go back over this with the red thread and blend them together. So right here, I'm just going off the edge a tiny little bit. I can easily elongate that, and then I can come in and kind of fill that in. Okay, and then when I get up here, this is what I do. I can just do a couple little stitches like this to blend in to get myself back over where I was. And you're kind of curving it because it fans out there. And you're mimicking this. You're always looking at these lines. What direction are they going as you're curving your thread? And I'm going to go around and up. Okay, let's stop for a second, because right here, this is supposed to where this pink is showing. This needs to be this dark burgundy. So I'm going to stop right now, and I'm going to cut a little piece right here, and I'm going to press it in, and then I'm going to start again. So I want you to watch me do how I do that. So I found some of that fabric, and it has, you know, fusible on it. I'm just going to cut a little wedge. I kind of like, what does that look like? Okay, kind of goes like that, kind of like that, kind of like that. It might work, it might not work. But I'm thinking, hey, put it in kind of like that. Hey, that looks really good. So I'm going to bring my iron over here. And I'm going to use just the tip of my iron. And I am going to, there you go. A nice hot iron. I'm ironing that in. Look at that. And now, let's go back over. I'm going to sew that in. And look at that. You can't even tell. So here's the quilt. I've taken it out of my machine, and here I am. I'm going to steam my quilt. Steam all the things that I have just stitched. Okay, which what it does is if there's any bubbles or ripples or where it feels like it's uneven, it all kind of smushes down right now and gets nice and flat. Okay, so now it's nice and flat. I'm going to let it cool a little bit. Okay, I've put on my red thread. Got it in the bobbin. Got it on top. Sewer's aid. Stuff on my hands. We're ready to go. So right here on these burgundy, dark burgundy petals, I still have this color red in my machine, and I'm going to add that. It's a little bit lighter, but it kind of, the sparkle and shine kind of catches the eye and gives the illusion that these are kind of a little lighter just in the middle. I'm doing it on these also. Just right here. Well, no, I think I'm going to use this for these petals. This red is great for this. Okay, I've taken my quilt out and I steamed and pressed it, and now it's back in. I also added some little seeds. I forgot to add them on earlier, but you can add them on now. And we're going to go around and we're going to do seeds, the seed stitch. The seed stitch is sometimes called a bubble or a rock stitch. And when I do it, I go around it 2 or 3 times. And on that last circle around, I kind of look for a place to spin out. And then you can travel around to get to the next area that you want to make a seed. Now, I'm trying to stitch right on the previous line of thread, but sometimes that's kind of hard to do. The rougher, the more it looks like seeds. So practice this before you start working on your flower. But I'm just going around 2 or 3 times following my previous rows of stitches. Pretty good. I'm going to go down here. I'm just going to travel around. Do this one. I'm going to go around it twice. And I can go back in here, travel, and we can do one here. So I'm going to travel around those shapes and then come over to this and go around it twice. Over here. And I'm just going to go around what I already did. Get over here. And there you go. I like that. Working on the center of my flower. I've got brown thread, and I am here over at my sewing machine. I am just pressing. I'm going to just press this right here. Okay, I just pressed my quilt, and now I'm going to do the center, and I'm just going to go and follow the outside edge of all this yellow and work my way out to the edge. I'm ready to do the little points of all the petals with the yellow. And I'm going to go in with this lighter yellow first, and then we'll come back in and shade in this area also. So again, I'm going to go off the edge a little bit to shade that in and soften it. And we're almost done. Here we go. Okay, on this, let me go up one more. On this, I've got to, I'm curving this way on this side, following this curve, and now I've got to switch over and curve the other way. So right about the middle or 3/4 over, that's when I start doing kind of more of a straighter line and then start curving up, making the transition. So I'm coming in right on my sewing table. I know you're thinking I'm crazy. And I am pressing those down because it's just easier to sew on when they're pressed down. And they sometimes lift up depending on your weather or the conditions. So we're just ironing it. I have my ironing board down low right behind my sewing machine so that I can easily get going with this. Okay, here we go again. Ah, that's so much better. Okay, right in here, my thread broke 3 times. And when that happens, go up and check your spool, make sure that nothing is grabbing it and the thread can spin off smoothly. And then come down and see, and I know that there is 1, 2, 3, 4 layers right here. It's having trouble going through it. So I warmed it up with my iron, and now I'm having no problems. Very important trick. So now we're going to do these little highlights, sketch on them with our thread, and just accentuate them. Now for this, I'm going to do a lot of traveling. So I lift up on my needle and my presser foot. I will come over here. I'll assess what I want to do in here. And I think I want to put a little of this brighter yellow right in here too. And let me come down and just meet this one. That's how I do it on my machine. Okay, I'm going to use some variegated threads here, and I'm going to show you how they work. They do really good on the leaves. You cannot use them on the petals because we want the, darker yellow here and the lighter yellow here and the pink here. And I've tried to use a variegated thread and try to, when it's dark, stitch in here, and when it goes light, stitch over here, and it's impossible. And if you use it just anywhere, it just kind of makes mud on this because we're painting with the thread. But somehow, through the magic of the color green, greens work great on adding highlights. And just are magic when they are on the leaves. So these are my two favorite greens. When I make a leaf, I start at the top. I'm saying the top of the leaf is the one that's closest to the flower, and the point, you know, goes down here. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to go down and make a center vein. I am treating both these colors as one leaf. Okay, so I just zone out that other color. But here, I'm going to go down to the tip. Now, if you'll notice that first drive down, I did not go straight. Okay, it was wiggly. You want to have that first line wiggly. Okay, so now I'm going to go up, and I'm going to go on the right side because it's easier for me, and I'm going to go up the edge and then into the center. And because there is another petal here, I'm going to kind of go around it. Okay, now here's how I do it. I go along the edge, and then I come up to the middle, and I'm making a curve right here. Okay, and then I go back out, but I'm not right on top of my stitch, I'm right next to the stitch. Then I'm going to go along the edge. Sometimes I'm on the edge and sometimes I'm not. And then I'm going to curve and go like a little S up to that line again. Do you see how I did the S? And then I'm going to follow the S back about 1/8 of an inch. Then I'm going to go along the edge again, and then curve and go back up. So it has this little curve. Come back down, go along the edge, curve up, go back out. Okay, I'm at the top again. Now I'm going to follow that main vein all the way down again. I'm going to go right on top of it or right next to it, doesn't matter. The center vein is always thicker on a leaf, so I go back down it. To the tip. Now you'll notice that the thread is going off the edge of the leaf. I like to do that. Now I've got to go up this side. And because I'm right-handed, it's easier for me to do the right-hand side. Left-hand side, I have to switch to the other side of my brain to do this. So you want to go up and then swing on into that center line. Do a curve and then come back out. And go along the edge, swing in, do the curve, and back out. And go up, swing in. And because this is a variegated thread, let's look at this. Ooh, that does some really nice stuff. Okay, let's do this guy in here. Again, I'll start right up here. And I'm going to curve that center line, go off. Now I'm going to go, I go up the right side. You can go wherever you want. Go up and in. Along the outside and in, curving, along the outside and in. You're just giving the suggestion that there are petals underneath that. Get up to the top. I'm coming back down. And now I got to go on this other side, so I have to kind of switch brains, go along the side and then swing up. Along the side and then swing up. And then here we're simulating. And there you go, and then we can just come on out. Sometimes I'll just travel over along the edge. And now let's do this one. a lot of times I like to add a little tendril. It's called kind of a curlicue. You've taken my class before, but it's kind of a tendril. It makes great ribbons too, but I'm going to show you how we do. It's just a pretty design to put in the background using green thread. So I usually go out and then I do a circle, and then I do another circle, and then I swing out and I do a circle going the other way, and then come back over and do another circle, but I don't close it up. Now I'm going to follow what I just quilted. I'm going to go back over my stitches, and then I'm going to curve around, crossing over certain places that feel good, and then I go back in, and there is your curlicue. It's an echo stitch on almost all of my quilts. I don't want the background to take away or be too bold for this main bold bright flower. So I've always thought that the echo stitch was a nice strong stitch that balanced out the stitches and didn't overpower the design of the flower. So if you don't know how to do an echo stitch, I'll show you right here. And I always have a little roller, as you can see here, lint roller, because I have white batting, which I like, and I just want to take up a little bit of the lint with my brush here, or roller. I put for this fabric, which I love this background fabric, you could put a navy blue in here easily, but I have black, so I'm going to use black, and it's hard to see black when you're stitching on a dark fabric. You may want to get your extra strong glasses out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to echo around. Sometimes you could echo around the whole flower. You could go all the way around, and maybe I'll do that. And then you just kind of keep echoing. You step out about, I think I step out about, what's that, 1/4, 1/8 of an inch. I try and keep them kind of close together, so you need to have the same amount of thread in the background that you have here. So I'm thinking about scant 4/8 inch is about what I do. So I'm going to start up here, and let's do the echo stitch. So the first line, I go kind of right up to my pieces. Now there's no fusible on my background fabric, so I have changed my thread setting back up to a 4.5 instead of a 3.5, because I need that extra, because there's no fusible under here, but we are still doing free motion, so you don't want it too tight. Then I'm going to step out. Here's another stitch I like to do. Sometimes when it's hard to see the black, I like to do this kind of angled back and forth. Well, congratulations. We have finished our quilt. And I have it here laying on my cutting table. I have squared it up using my long ruler. Next thing I need to do is put a sleeve on and my binding, and I am done. And thank you so much for joining me for today's class. And I hope that you will visit my website and see other classes that I have out. And if you have any questions, please email me at melindabuladesigns@comcast.net. Thank you so much for being part of my class.